So we've been waiting for months for somebody to finally reveal a price tag for one of these big VR headsets, and Oculus has been putting out numerous statements over the last few weeks, kind of preparing everybody, letting everybody know, saying, hey, this isn't going to be cheap, and that there's going to be more people who are going to want it than can actually go out and buy it or afford it. They said if you take all the components, and if this wasn't subsidized, this headset would run you over $1,000 easily. Now, I was hoping that we were going to actually hear Sony's PlayStation VR, like their price point last night whenever I was watching the CES conference. They showed a trailer for a PlayStation VR headset at the beginning of the conference. They showed it again at the end, but in between there was absolutely no mention of it whatsoever, which is kind of surprising because everybody's talking about VR at CES this year, but PlayStation just showed us a picture of it. But anyway, most people assumed that the price wasn't going to be that bad with these headsets. That was until today when it was announced that Oculus is going to be $600, which doesn't even include taxes or shipping and handling, which is pretty damn expensive, especially when you consider that, that's just the price for the headset. You still got to have an expensive PC to play on it, and it still doesn't include the cost of the games. So after the public had kind of a meltdown over the price, Oculus's founder, Palmer Luckey, said, quote, "To reiterate, we are not making money on Rift hardware. High-end VR is expensive, but Rift is obscenely cheap for what it is." But telling us that Oculus Rift is obscenely cheap with a $600 price tag still didn't ease the pain for a lot of people, though. We don't know the price of Valve's VR yet. They did just reveal, though, at CES this year that it has a front-end camera now that can actually show you objects in the room so you don't trip over them while you're actually playing the game. That probably doesn't sound like that's going to be too cheap. And then as far as PlayStation VR goes, Sony themselves have even stated that this is going to be, more expensive than a console. So for the mainstream audience, VR seems out of reach at the moment. Now, having said that, I don't think Oculus is, going to go under or go away because of this. They've said that this was going to be a slow rollout, that don't expect it to just fly off the shelves at the very beginning. And you got to think about all the items that you and I have in our homes today that whenever they first released, they were really only for the ultra rich because they cost so much. They were, HD TVs and smartphones and computers and terabyte hard drives. All those things were completely out of reach for the mainstream public whenever they first released. And, new technology always is super expensive, and it always comes down in price over time. So right now, it is a very niche crowd, and I think, honestly, Oculus is okay with that. Even at that price point, even for $600, they still sold out of stock for their opening launch within 14 minutes. And so they were originally going to launch in March. Now the first 2 months of stock have been sold out, so it's going to be May before you can get one if you go and order one right now. But this also gives them time to kind of work out the kinks because, by the time that most of us can afford it, it's going to be probably a lot better experience than even what it is right now. That's the way it always works. Things get cheaper, but they also get better over time. And I'm sure this is a quality product, but there's still a lot of issues. I was reading today where a BBC reporter was trying VR at CES, and he was writing about how he was ready to throw up right after he used it. So people are still having these adverse effects. And the thing is, you don't know how it's going to affect you until you actually get to try it. And we also don't know about the long-term effects. What is it going to do to your eyes? If anything, it may not do anything at all. We were told sitting in front of the TV would hurt your eyes, but that's kind of been proven as a myth. But what will it do to your neck and to your back if you keep this on for a long time? People just don't know. But ultimately, I do think that Oculus and Vive are going to do fine, and this also is going to encourage more competition. Because people are going to be racing to make a device that's just as good as these, that's going to be able to undercut the price. This is why you want the free markets. This is why you want competition. This is why capitalism works. So as far as PSVR is concerned, analysts are predicting a price point for $350 to $600. and they're expecting Sony to sell close to 2 million units in 2016. But I think if they come out anywhere near the price of Oculus, then this thing is dead on arrival. And I do place it in kind of a different category than the PC counterparts. And I think anything really over $400 is going to be a really hard sell for a lot of people, because you're going to have more games that's supported with PC in the end. And we also know that, I mean, this is just fact, Sony doesn't have the greatest track record of supporting their accessories. And this headset, you got to also ask, is this headset going to be supported on the next PlayStation console if they come out with a new one? So how long of a life is this going to be, especially if you're asking people to put up and fork over more money than they actually paid for their console? Because in the end, this is just an accessory. So they've also got to get the word out, because I also had a story on VGN today about brand recognition. And almost half the population still doesn't even know that VR exists. You've got 25% of people, though, who said that they've heard of Oculus. 21% said they've heard of Samsung VR. And then 20% have heard of PlayStation VR. So post your predictions of VR down below. I know that there's a very excited niche of gamers out there who want to jump in, who's excited about it. But me personally, I haven't seen a ton of enthusiasm from the vast majority of gamers. And even if you go watch some of these trailers for the VR headsets, it's not like they get a ton of views or likes or comments and things like that. It seems like just something that just people aren't dying to play for the most part. And every poll that I've taken, people always seem to think that it's more like a fad, like, 3D TVs and pet rocks. So if you want to read all these stories, because I lumped like 5 or 6 stories in this one video, then links down below. And as always, go to videogamesandnews.com for the latest headlines as they happen. That does it for me, the Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Are you listening? Damn.